Hello everyone, welcome to Frozen Links. I'm Ryan, and today I'm going to be playing Kerbal Space Program. Now, for those of you who don't know, Kerbal is a game where you fly spacecraft, rovers, aircraft, any vehicle you can imagine that you construct throughout a solar system with Kerbals as your crew. Alright, let's get started with the flight. Now, I've got it at 4 times speed because it took a bit of time, but not too long. And so I've made this powerful-ish rocket. It had SRBs, which just attached, as you could see, and now it has a liquid fuel stage. Wow, this is really dark. It's not that dark in the game. That will be fixed in the future. And this craft will be going to the Mun, which is one of the 2 moons of Kerbin, which is the planet that we just took off from. And it's where the Kerbals live. Now the Kerbals, you can see them in the corner of the screen. They're portraits. There's also a 3rd Kerbal on this craft, because this craft is capable of taking 3 Kerbals in a capsule. And so I'll be taking them to the Mun. And the other moon, or satellite of Kerbin, is called Minmus. And yeah, it's not currently in view. Now I'm using the maneuver node tool to set up the orbit that I want to get around Kerbin. You can see the different things that you can pull with the mouse to move the different directions. Now I'm burning using this upper stage, pointing in the direction that the nav ball is showing to get into that orbit that I've created with the maneuver node maker. Alright, now I'm setting up another maneuver to get my encounter with the Mun, and it takes a bit of time to get it well in place, so that will happen, and I'll faff around with that for a while, as you can see. Now I'm just extending the solar panels so we can get some power on here. We have a lot of power already, but this will recharge it. Now I'm just waiting to get into position for the burn to get us out of orbit of Kerbin. And now I'm burning. As you can see, in the little thing on the side of the nav ball that's showing how many meters per second I have to do until the burn is complete, there's a little line in the middle of that shows that I will have to go to the next stage of the rocket, because this one runs out of fuel, as you can tell. Then I use the other engines, and this stage wasn't detaching very well for some reason, but then eventually it came off, so I guess it was fine. And then pretty close, and then we have our encounter. I'm just bringing it down so that our periapsis, which is the point when you're closest to the body that you're going towards, is lower. I got down to 40,000, as you could see a minute ago. Now I'm just setting up another node to get the orbit more precise and level on about like the equator of the Mun. Just going towards it. This isn't a very large burn, so it'll be pretty quick. Just bringing it down. Alright, now we've got a bit of time in the middle, so just showing off the craft. It has RCS, which I just showed off. The gear can go down, it has lights. Now I'm taking Kerbal on an EVA, going out, turning on their lights. We can do an inspection of the ship. This whole thing will be landing on the Mun. It's not like an Apollo style where you have one part in orbit, then one lander that goes down, comes back and goes. No, this whole thing will be landing. On the Mun, it's really much easier just to do it that way. It's can be more efficient if you're an earlier player too, like me. Also, to give a sense of scale, Kerbin is 1/10 the size of the Earth, so it's a similar scale for like the Mun and the Moon. So yeah, the Mun is about maybe a 10th the size of our Moon. I believe that's correct. Alright, now I'm just setting up my new orbit for the Mun, because we're within the Mun's gravitational sphere of influence, and now we just have to get down into orbit, into a stable orbit. And the burn is almost complete, and we're good. Now, here's the part where I was trying to decide where to land. So, coming up here, you'll see a seamless cut right now, where I went and looked at my map and decided where to land. I have a map on my wall over here showing all of the biomes of the Mun and where I've landed before in this save. This is my main save I use. I was just going back to the tracking station to get onto, so I'm controlling this craft directly because I got off of it. Now I'm just burning down so that we're going towards the surface, and this part I'm going to slowly start burning to reduce the velocity. We're going to be landing in this crater that we're just passing over here. I was testing a crew report to see if it showed what biome we're over yet. And for the landing, we're going to want to be below 10 meters per second, really around like 4, but it could be a bit higher than that. It's below 10 that we need. But that'll be closer towards the surface that we get closer to that speed. Showing the interior view, if you look straight ahead where I'm zooming in there, that's the radar altimeter. So it doesn't actually have that in this view when you're piloting the craft. You have to go to the interior view. It's very useful because the altimeter at the top of the screen right now, it is just set to sea level, or like the equivalent for the Mun. But given that the surface is uneven, it won't be exactly correct at 0 when we land. So by looking at the radar altimeter, we can actually see precisely when we're landing, because it's true for whatever surface we're over, the altitude. Now coming down, very good landing at below 2 meters per second. This is in real time now, as you could see by the brilliant captions I put up. Putting out the solar panels, putting down the ladder, as you'll see. The ladder doesn't work quite correctly, as we'll see in a minute, but it's good enough. They don't really need it. Alright, back to 4 times speed, and I got Jeb the pilot out, and I was naming this flag because I always place a flag whenever we land to show the biomes and stuff. And I was remembering which biome we're in, and then I looked and remembered, and it's the east far side crater. Now, as you can see, the ladder doesn't quite work correctly, and he tends to fall, but he just uses his RCS pack to get back in. You've got under here, these are like scientific experiments, which can be used to go back to Kerbin. They give you science, which unlocks new technologies and stuff, so I'm just doing the experiments there. Then I take out my scientist, Bob, and he takes a surface sample, picks up the experiments from in there, and restores the bay for future experiments just in case, but I don't believe we use that again in this mission. Alright, then he goes back up. And then, for good measure, I take out Bill, the engineer. He doesn't really have to do anything, but it's good to have him out, have him shut the doors, and do a ceremonial inspection of the undercarriage with his light. Then, he gets back in, and we're about ready to take off. This is back at 5 times speed, actually faster this time on the way back. And we're taking off. And at this point I was trying to figure out which direction I was going, so then figured it out in the map view to get roughly equatorial in my orbit. Then set up another orbit, except I don't actually end up using this precise orbit. I just sort of burn prograde, and then prograde is like the direction of your movement, which like increases your orbit. Then I set up another maneuver node. This takes a while because I'm trying to figure out how to do a proper maneuver. So I end up just setting up an orbit so I have more room to move around because we have a lot of fuel left. This craft that I made, I've also used it for missions to Minmus, and it still has enough fuel. But Generally, missions to Minmus would actually take less fuel than the Mun because Minmus is a smaller body. It's just out of view in the map mode here. But it is a bit further away than the Mun, and it also depends on how you get there. But yeah, this thing has a lot of extra fuel, so we have room to do things like this. But I'm just going to go there in 2 burns now, because I'm going to get into this current orbit that I set up, and then set up another orbit that gets us below the atmospheric line of Kerbin. And for reference, the I guess the Kármán line of Kerbin is at 70,000 meters. So I've got it down, it's in the 40,000s. So that will be low enough for us to re-enter on the first pass. And also in Kerbal Space Program, I have the full re-entry heating enabled, but I also didn't take any ablator off of the heat shield, which we're going to be using for this. It takes up extra weight, but I mean, I have extra fuel in this craft, so that doesn't really matter. Shutting the solar panels now. So you can see the ablator on there. It's also in the upper right corner of the screen as it's going down, but you'll see we'll have plenty because that wears away as the heat goes on it. Now the plasma's rushing past the craft, hitting the heat shield. We go to internal view, flames rushing by. I decided to speed it up for myself because it was taking a while. Now we're below the thicker parts. Well, I guess we are in the thicker parts of the atmosphere now. As we get lower and lower, put out the drogue chutes and then the main chutes. These are opening up. And just looking at the radar altimeter for fun as we go down. And that's the craft landed. Now remember to subscribe, watch our other video, leave a like, and we will see you in the next one.